Hey everyone, welcome back to the Demis Hellen channel. We're going to be creating an arpeggio or the melody from my Galaxy audio demo. That is for the pack that is available on Patreon exclusively. You can get hold of the pack if you're not a Patreon. You can just visit the shop over there, but it's not available on my normal website. And we're going to recreate that melody today in this video. Okay, so we now know what we're creating there, and if you want to get hold of this melody, you can just copy what you see in this video today, and you've got it, voila. Otherwise, you can consider becoming a patron. You'll get access to the MIDI there via the project that I have posted. So the entire Cubase project is there, and also the MIDI file is going to be linked in this particular video portion as well. So you can get hold of the resource if you don't actually own Cubase. All right, so let's do this in the usual format. We are going to look at the chord structure, and then we're going to look at the pattern, and then we'll build the melody. So you can see here that we have got our chord structure, and this is all in F minor. So you can see the first chord is F minor, then we've got an A flat, then we've got an E flat, and then for the second portion, we change the first two chords, but we go back to that E flat at the end. So we actually have a D flat, F minor, and then the E flat. So you can see we change that first chord, but then we go back to this F minor, but for the second chord. So it just jumbles it up a little bit, but it creates a very nice sound, and it's just something that I came up with. So let's look at the pattern. This is a very simple pattern this time round. So for this second bar here, let's just sort of loop this section. Just making sure we're not clipping there. You can see that we've got this 8th dotted rhythm, and then it restarts halfway through the bar. So what I mean by that is this pattern would usually be like this, sort of the same note distance between. So we're in 16ths at the moment, so we've got two 16th note gaps between each note. But to break that cycle, I bring it back at the start of the third beat, so it sort of like trips that melody up, and it makes it sound a little bit faster, as opposed to this. It's just a little bit too laboured for what we wanted to do for this track. And then what happens is that follows the bass. The bass notes do exactly the same. And because we're working in a 16th grid, I just fill the rest of them in, but with half of a 16th, so that's a 32nd note long, and that just fills in the gaps and makes it nice and syncopated. And it just gives a nice sort of pace for the track. So that's the melody there. So I'm going to copy all of this across. Okay, so the bass line follows the chord structure. So F, A flat, E flat, and then here, here, here. So let's build that into the pattern now. So the first two notes are on F. The second two bars, shall I say, not notes, are on the A flat, one octave down. And then the next two bars go on to, the E flat, and that maintains across those next two, and that completes the first 8 bars. For the second lot, we have it on this D flat here. Then we go to the F minor, so we leave it where it is. And then for the final section, we go down to that A flat there. And that is our bass line installed the piece. And then what we are utilizing, so you can see we've got the F and we've got the C up at the top here. If we look back at the chords, we're using F and C. So we're missing that middle note out of the chord structure essentially, and we're using the 1st and 5th to set the tone of the track. With this, we are now going to follow this sort of structure. We are going to have this and this, and that's what's going to happen across all of it. We're going to have one full bar of holding that first note, and then we're going to have the second bar split in half and falling or rising, depending on how this melody is forming. So that's going to sound like this. Now, that sounds wrong from the original, and that's because it's one octave too low. So hold Shift, and press the arrow key, transfer those notes, exactly the same ones, but 1 octave higher. And you can hear that sounds much more emotional and has a bit more of an uplifting feel to it. And for the second part, we are going to have this, so it's going to drop to there. And you can hear that in the original one I dropped that down, and we're going to use this same structure here, but we're going to actually start on G, but A flat, sorry, and then up to the next note. Like this. And don't forget, you can develop this any way you want. If you hear it different, then you change it to how you want it to be. So then from that point, just making sure that we're on the right track, we are. We're going to go up here. So usually I would return to the same note like this, and then do something like this. So you can see we're using that note there, and I rise back there, but I'm now deciding we're going to go here because it just gives it a little bit more leeway for how we make the rest of the melody. And we're going to do something like that, I think. Now you can hear that that repetition should happen again like this. But that's too repetitive, it sounds the same. So we're actually going to throw this one up to the next note in the sequence, and we're going to have something like that maybe. Definitely the next note up. And then the cycle starts again for the melody. So this is how simple this is. Never overthink your melodies. As long as it sounds good and captivates, that's what matters. And we're just going to copy that across. So we've got exactly the same for the second part, but we've got different basses at the bottom, or different positions for the bass notes. And there we are, we've got our loop, but it sounds a little bit wrong at the end, so I've chosen to sort of uplift. That's where the uplifting trance comes in, and generate this upwards like this, and throw in something like that. Let's just try there first, and then the next one. See, it just doesn't quite go high enough on that part. Just do it by ear. Don't look at where the notes are or where it should be. Just listen to it and think, yeah, no, it needs to go a bit higher. So you might argue that that needs to go a little bit further, but then you start jumping into territory where you're going too high and it's too disconnected from the melody. So I'm going to opt for that E flat to finish it on, and it brings it back nicely to the beginning. And that's as simple as it gets. The melodies don't have to be overly complex. They can be very simple. You can see I created an 8-bar melody, copied it over, slightly changed the bass, just using different chords, and then that ending part to give it a nice little uplift upwards instead of it going back down, because it sounds quite boring that way around. So there we are. That is the melody and structure for that. Hopefully you did enjoy the video, and if you want to consider becoming a patron, you can get access to the pack. Otherwise, you can just go to the Patreon shop and buy the pack outright as well. So thank you very much for supporting. There are more videos over on Patreon covering the video of this and how the track was made. So if you were interested in that as well, you can go and check that out too. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Take care.